Welcome to the January 31st edition. I was going to say like 76th because it feels like this month has gone on forever, but that joke's tired. About as tired as I am of this month, to be honest with you. This is a fun show, though. We've got Stafford and Goff trade to talk about. That a gift from on high came down upon us. So we're going to talk about that trade. We're going to talk about who we think won, what the rationale is for both sides, if there was one. And then we're going to talk Super Bowl. We're going to go in on some props, talk a little bit about the game overall, and get out of here, get you started off on Super Bowl week the right way. Let's rock. I heard that we both reacted to the trade the exact same way, which was retweeting Schefter with the words "Holy shit." So, do you want to expound upon that?
Well, I thought the best part was, with no football, and I'm not going to count the Senior Bowl. There's no football for like a week now. I've been trying to watch new shows and movies with my wife and stuff. I was a glass and a half in of wine, and I'm like, this is just the right amount of joy to write this article. So I jumped on it. I was like, let's write a little bit about this. And I can't help but think about this as like a complete system failure in some ways for the Los Angeles Rams. And I don't think that anybody, the blame can't be concentrated, right? So on one end, how much do you really blame Jared Goff? I mean, the guy,
I think he deserves zero blame. I mean, what are you blaming him for?
You get drafted by Jeff Fisher, you're the cornerstone of the franchise. They trade up for you, right? So they've already spent multiple first-round picks on you.
I've got a nice thing here.
And then they get Sean McVay, who elevates your play to a level where I think a lot of us, especially as you watch that Monday night game against Kansas City that was supposed to be in Mexico that was ended up in LA, and you're thinking to yourself, okay, you can win with this player. Maybe not because of this player, but he was kind of on the border of winning because of. I mean, some of the throws he made in that game were really good. And then at the same time, and I just tweeted this, he was who he was, right? Like after that game in 2018, the year they went to the Super Bowl, his PFF grade was 22nd in the NFL. It was behind Trubisky, bad Josh Allen, your guy Nick Mullins.
Oh, everything fell off. I mean, they went to Chicago. He had one of the worst games we've ever seen.
6.5 yards per pass.
It was terrible.
Fucking Matt Patricia was the one who laid out the blueprint for how to stop that offense. And so, granted, Goff deserves some blame for never improving, right? I think fundamentally he's the same guy today, now as a fucking Detroit Lion, as he was in week 11 when he was roasting Kansas City. It's just that I think the obvious mismanagement here was Sean McVay believing that it didn't matter, that he could, and it's not his job to be like, okay, if he makes X amount more, I'm going to lose a Brandon Cooks. I'm going to lose the John Sullivan. Injuries are going to happen to Whitworth. Roger Saffold's going to go to Tennessee. And our defense, granted, defense got better this year, but it wasn't quite as good a season ago. Special teams got worse, all that kind of stuff. It's not the coach's fault to make that calculation in his head. So ultimately, does this fall on Les Snead in saying, what are you as far as why was there no pushback? Or is it the league as a whole? Because the league as a whole refuses right now to have tough conversations about quarterbacks like Baker Mayfield, about quarterbacks like Lamar Jackson, about quarterbacks like Jared Goff. They just refuse. This guy, if you've achieved a level of competence at the quarterback position, ding, 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 you're the next deal. Paid.
Okay, so let's set the table for what you're talking about, the system failure. It goes back to trading for Jared Goff in the first place. So they go trade for Jared Goff. They give up 2 first-round picks. They trade with the Titans. They move up from 15 to 1 to get Jared Goff. So they give up 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, and 2 third-round picks. Now, there's a self-fulfilling prophecy to that, which you've talked about.
By the way, our boss, Chris Collinsworth, predicted this trade, by the way, in his mock draft in 2016 or whatever that was.
Basically Tony Romo.
Yeah.
So they want Jared Goff to be good, right? And then all of a sudden he is with the right scheme and the right coach. And it starts to wane. And we've heard from different sources that Jared Goff and Sean McVay didn't get along too great, right? And there was a little bit of a disconnect in the work ethic between the two, which I think spins forward to why this trade ultimately happened, which is Matt Stafford coming to the Rams and the Rams giving up 2 first-round picks, 22 and 23, a 3rd-round pick this year, and Jared Goff. So all in all, in return for Matt Stafford, they've given up 4 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, and 3 third-round picks. And that, when you put it all in that context, you're like, holy cow. I mean, Matt Stafford's a fine quarterback, but what's his ceiling?
He has 3 years in our system of earning top 10 wins above replacement. I mean, he's nice. Here's the thing about Stafford, though, that I have a problem with. Stafford is not impervious to outside conditions. And this Rams team is going to be nothing but outside conditions for the foreseeable future. I mean, this is their 3rd defensive coordinator in as many years, right? Mm-hmm. We saw how one injury to that defense made them unplayable in the divisional round against Green Bay.
It's to be remembered that Jared Goff was not the reason they lost that game.
Yeah, they got
Jared
rolled
Goff played
in that game.
Fine in that game.
And again, the offensive line, they got better than they expected play this year out of them, but their left tackle is like 40 years old. Mm-hmm. They drafted Van Jefferson high. He didn't pan out that well. Josh Reynolds worked out okay this year. You're getting top end play out of Robert Woods. You're getting top end play out of Cooper Kupp. How long does that continue?
Well, right? You could make the case, and this was something that I wanted to ask you. Is Stafford going – now, he's certainly going to a better offensive scheme.
Yeah.
But is he actually getting better playmakers?
I don't know. I mean, I think the offensive line in Detroit was fine.
Kenny Golladay, Marvin Jones, Amendola, T.J. Hawkinson.
Was a top 10 tight end, yeah.
And now you're going to Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, both nice, but so are Marvin Jones and Kenny Golladay. Yeah. Who's your other receiver? Well, plus, Josh Reynolds, whatever. And your tight ends, Gerald Everett's a nice player. He's a guy they took in the 2nd round a few years back. They haven't had a 1st-round pick, so he's basically he's one of their top picks over the past few years. I think it's very interesting because the assumption is Matt Stafford was just held back by the horribleness, the putrid Detroit Lions, and while you can make some case for that, certainly, it's not as if he has overcome those and played brilliantly. And that's what kind of PFF grading is all about, right? Deshaun Watson played for a terrible team this year and managed to earn the 3rd highest grade in the NFL. You haven't seen that from Matt Stafford, right? You have not seen him overcome circumstance, but I want to put that in air quotes because he's had great talent on the offensive side of the ball. And so it's interesting. The assumption that he is just going to be a massive upgrade over Jared Goff, I think is very interesting. Let me ask you this. Do you think that this trade, so they gave up 2 firsts and Jared Goff, my immediate thought was one of those 1st-round picks was to say, hey, thank you for taking Jared Goff's contract. Here's a 1st. Do you think that's the case?
Well, there are reports that are saying that Detroit wants Goff or wanted Goff, which I think is
Peter Schrager.
Given what the head coach of the Detroit Lions has said over the first part of his tenure there, and given who his offensive coordinator is, I do think that there is a kernel of truth in the idea that the Lions think. And granted, and we wrote about this last night in the article, I described the Vikings and the Bears as rudderless. They are rudderless franchises. They don't have a direction. They're not good. And if you're the Detroit Lions, there's part of you that says, oh, and this is why everybody at plus 900, plus 800, plus 700, we're buying into Detroit going into the season. Minnesota and Chicago are directionless franchises right now. Mm-hmm. And the Green Bay Packers are one personnel decision away from starting Jordan Love at quarterback. If you're the Detroit Lions, you come out of this thinking, okay, if things go right, we could win in 2021 with Jared Goff and an improving team just by virtue of the 6 games we get against these 3 teams alone. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, what you do know is the 3 franchises I'm talking about are not moving in the same direction as you, right? F prime for the Detroit Lions is higher than any other NFC North team. So I can see the Goff thing making sense from the perspective of, look, we've gone, look, think about the direction this franchise has gone. 2017, they're 9-7 with Jim Caldwell. They don't make the playoffs. They lose to a Bengals team over here that was just brutal. And it's like, well, this isn't good enough. And then for 3 years, they win, 14 games? There's probably some people in that franchise that feel some pressure to win and win right now, which I think you and I would scoff at. But if you do look and you take inventory of the NFC North, this isn't the NFC West. And that's part of the Stafford thing too. Stafford goes from an NFC North that's kind of weak in my opinion and goes to an NFC West where he's not the best quarterback still. He might not, depending upon how the whole trade thing shakes out, especially if they get Watson. If San Francisco gets Watson.
He could be the 4th best quarterback.
Exactly. And the 4th best prospect at quarterback.
So Peter Schrager reports that there were multiple teams that viewed Goff, a 25-year-old quarterback, highly, would have given up actual value for him. That, to me, makes this trade more concerning. So I was talking myself into this not being so much.
This is a salary dump for Goff.
That's what I assumed.
Yeah,
and
me too.
Right, and that made me think about this trade differently because in order for them to get rid of Goff and also get a quarterback in return, there aren't many teams that are going to do that.
Yep.
So when you look at it through that lens and you go, okay, if Stafford's a marginal improvement, and we're going to go through his numbers here in a second, I can kind of see where they're getting at. But if you could have gotten something for Goff, to me, this is an astronomically disgraceful trade.
Yeah.
To the point where, I mean, I think about so your option should have been Deshaun Watson first, right? If you should be trying to get Deshaun Watson, and if that fails, you should be moving on.
If Houston's a freaking mark, right?
If Goff is an asset, then how are you not leveraging that to try and get Deshaun Watson?
Well, that's what I'm saying. If there's a team out there that is, and granted, Houston could be digging their heels in, and if they certainly are. If I were Houston, I probably we talked about this a long time, but I probably would too. You know, because if I got myself into this situation and then all of a sudden I had an epiphany that I need to get my shit in order, mm-hmm. right? Which is, if you're a Houston Texans fan, that's what you got to be praying for,
yep.
right? Then you do everything that you can to make it work with Watson, because that's really, but like that's the issue. Is I think that the entire league, and do you believe, George? Do you believe that Stafford was worth jumping the gun for?
That's the thing. I was trying to think of analogies, right? And I almost Dan Campbell. We've talked about Dan Campbell a bunch, right? But I actually think Dan Campbell was he did some things I was impressed with. Here's what he did. He came out and he said, quote, "The trade talks for Matt Stafford are getting hot and heavy." Okay.
By the way, let me finish.
Okay. We've seen the picture of him in his office, and someone tweeted out, "This looks like someone who's preparing to sell 15 Ford F-150s this month." And I put it together and I was like, the Rams basically showed up to a car lot and got sold a car on the premise that, look, this is the last car I've got in the lot. Okay. This brand new Honda Accord in black with black leather seats, exactly the specs you want. It's the last one I've got. And I've got 15 people who are going to want them.
Yeah.
So you walk out of this lot right now, you're not getting them. That's what this was, wasn't it? Like they got spooked by Dan Campbell.
I'm willing. Look, I think the Dan Campbell experience, whether he's good or not, is going to be entertaining mm-hmm. as hell. Just be the illustrations.
Tom
exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's sort of, you remember in the movie A Beautiful Mind where Russell Crowe's character John Nash,
such a good movie,
explains to his friend. It's a good movie at the beginning. I think it trails after, but in the beginning where they're all sitting there, and it's sort of where he like quote unquote like thinks about game theory, right? And where they all are looking at the one girl, and there's all the other girls around who are not all that, like we're talking about like 90%, right? And he says, if we all settle for all the other girls, then we're all happy, and that's the equilibrium here. And like I can't believe Stafford ended up being the first girl there. I don't get it. And good on Detroit, right? Because like think about it, and we'll talk about this. I think you had your notes, but like not only like the Brad Holmes thing, like they had to give two third-round picks. They got one of those from LA back for that trade, and then they got the 2 first-round picks, which not only screw over an NFC team you're going to be competing with in your own conference if anything goes well for you, but later, right? Like I think all of us have various levels of optimism about what the world's going to be like in a year or so. But we all know that this draft is going to be one of the toughest ones relative to the next few. And the other thing here, if the first round pick you draft this year goes well, you're going to be more likely, or versus next year or the year after, you're going to be more likely to have the cash to extend the other ones. So it was a good move from Detroit's perspective. I don't know if this was on purpose. Again, decisions by front offices in the NFL minus like 3 or 4 groups are all a random walk. So we're giving brilliance.
Let's not imbue too much credit. But
maybe Detroit
Ford Salesman of the Year, Dan
Detroit
Campbell
might have lucked into a really good situation here, especially relative to the situation the league is in.
This reminds me of an NBA trade where you're first off potentially giving up a player with a crappy salary and sending a pick out to get rid of them. Yep. But secondarily, you're going all in on right now. And I can't help but think about the Brooklyn Nets, not this recent edition, but we're going to bring KG, Paul Pierce, and Ray Allen edition, because you look at the Rams, and the Rams are fragile as hell right now. I mean, if Matt Stafford is not a top 7 quarterback, things could really fall apart. Why? Brandon Staley is, if anyone has not read Robert May's article on Brandon Staley, go read it, and you'll understand why that defense was able to take a leap. You've talked about this a lot. Defensive coordinator is the 12th man on the field for the defense and might be the most important. But they're super fragile because of the defense being a top unit this year. It's not going to be next year. Just period. It's not going to be. And then on the offensive side, you're not bringing in anyone new.
Right.
You don't have picks to go do it. You don't have money to go do it. We just talked about their weapons. They need more weapons still. I don't know that you can be satisfied with the weapons that they have.
The Rams on the defensive line missed 1 start all year. In the linebacking core, at cornerback, they had 3 corners that combined for 41 starts, and they missed 4 starts from the safety position. I mean, you're talking about it. All the important places on that defense, they were extremely healthy all year and performed well. Like that's what you want. But the problem is you can't repeat that. And when you don't get that, how resilient are you? You're going to be less so. And I'm just looking over here, basically the Rams drafts. Like, I think there's a narrative that they do well despite having lower capital. But is there, aside from the 2017 draft, is there evidence that they do?
Let's go over their drafts.
I mean,
okay. So they didn't have a first round. I just wrote down first round picks. They're not going to have one. They didn't have one last year. Didn't have one the year before in 19. Didn't have one the year before in 18. Didn't have one in 17. In 16, they took Goff. In 15, they took Gurley Todd. Congrats. Wonderful pick. In 14, they took Greg Robinson. What a disaster. And then Aaron Donald, right? That was the Robert Griffin fleecing. In 2013, they took Tavon Austin. In 2012, they took Michael Brockers. In 2011, they took Robert Quinn. And in 2010, they took Sam Bradford. Okay, so you
And the second round picks have also been decent with Roger Saffold in 2010, Janoris Jenkins in 2012. Alec Ogletree sucked, but most of the league thinks he was decent as the first in 2013. Yeah. But
look, if just because your first round picks are bad doesn't mean you're good at drafting second round players.
Well, and there's all this and again, this is ridiculous. All these people are like, look at every single first-round pick that hasn't worked out. That's why you should. And people ignore the cost control that these picks give rise to. They ignore the development aspect that these things give rise to. Like
what it means to a franchise. Yeah, I mean, like all of those things are good points.
And what it means to a franchise is also it cuts both ways, because I think the Goff extension is very much a banner hanging procedure.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Because they traded so much for him.
Yeah, and that's a really tough thing. And granted, this trade here, and I think Leslie talked about it in an interview, it gives the impression that they are pragmatic and are willing to walk back a decision they've made. But the decisions they've made are all sort of like a snowball effect of that issue to begin with, which was we drafted this guy, we want to give him a huge deal, and we want to be able to show every single person we got it right. And in reality, like the Goff thing wasn't even a bad deal from the perspective of the money. It was you signed it after his third year. You have the first round pick gets a 5th-year option. You have a ton of leverage. If you sign a guy in his third year, you're basically foregoing the opportunity. I mean, if you really throw it out there, you have 4 years of relatively team-friendly things. The 4th year of the rookie deal, the 5th-year option, and 2 franchise tags.
You're saying that with almost 95, 100% certainty that this guy is a stud. And for you to have said that about Jared Goff after what happened, as you illustrated, after the Kansas City game is absolutely absurd. So I have a couple of thoughts on this. The first is that if you look at the Rams offense, and I just used expected points added per pass play. 2017, they're 9th. 2018, they're 6th. 2019, they're 15th. And this past year, they're 22nd. So McVay looks at that. Now, he's probably not using that data point exactly, but he's looking at the offense going down. And what he's saying is the offensive struggles are Goff's fault and Goff's fault alone. That's what this is saying, right? Because it's saying, look, we don't need to improve anywhere else but quarterback. And this is the quarterback that can get it done. And that to me is really interesting, because who's to say that maybe some of the struggles were not McVay's scheme becoming something that defenses were able. I mean, Matt Patricia figured it out. And what McVay went to this past year with Goff, and it'll be interesting to see what he does with Stafford, was a shorter passing game, yards after the catch stuff. But that's not where Stafford has excelled.
Yeah, I mean, Stafford has very much struggled in that realm. I mean,
that's where he's been inconsistent.
He was 3rd in ADOT this year. My issue with Goff, by the way, with Stafford, I was going to say this a little bit earlier, but this sounds silly, but when things change, he's always risen above his previous expectations. But the regression has invariably come. When I think it was 2011, he finally got a chance to start all 16 games. He hurt his first 2 years. He was great. He threw like 40 touchdowns, 5,000, all that kind of stuff. And then you saw the regression over time. And then he gets Jim Caldwell, a decent season. Then he starts to regress. They fire the offense coordinator, put the affably named Jim Bob Cooter in there, and he dominates for the second half of 2015. Then Cooter starts to struggle, and what do? They get Bevel. And Bevel's great, but Stafford plays half a season with Bevel, and we're guilty of this. Everybody is. We all were like, oh my God, look at this new Stafford. And then what happened this year? Stafford was the 12th best quarterback in terms of PFF WAR again, despite the fact, Golladay was hurt most of the year, but you have Amendola, you have Marvin Jones, you have Hawkinson, who played really well this year, and the thing is, I can see a situation. I think this is gonna happen. I can see a situation where Stafford plays out of his mind for the first 6 or 7 games next year, and the Rams start 4-2, 5-2, all that kind of stuff, and eventually, I mean, it's going to end the same way as it's ended for the Rams for the past 3-4 years. They finish 10-6. They go to the playoffs. They can't compete with a team with a real a real elite quarterback, and then this team's having a staring contest with each other for the next 2 years until the egg timer goes off.
Yeah, it's weird because McVay is such a young guy that it's strange to me that they're betting everything on the right now, as if they almost want to say, hey, let's try it and let's accelerate ourselves towards a full rebuild if we need to. Because that's what this is getting to. They have no way to really improve their team after this. But I will say this about Stafford, which I think is interesting. So if you look at the last 3 seasons, Stafford compared to Goff, this stuck out to me. Stafford has played about 300. He has 350 fewer dropbacks. He has 11 more big-time throws, but he has almost 30 fewer turnover-worthy plays. And I think it's a microcosm of what Sean McVay could not stand about Jared Goff. There was a lack of, I hate to use this term, but like alpha-ness to him, right? Like he went out there were often times where it looked like he played scared. McVay was obviously always telling him what play to run, until the communication shut off. And he wanted a guy that would actually raise, the playing level on top of what he was giving the guy to do, right? Whereas Goff was always just taking it to whatever McVay could give him. There was never anything that he added on top of it. And I think those are some of the things you see with Stafford. So I can understand where McVay is coming from, and I can see McVay looking at LaFleur this past year with Rodgers, who is a savvy, smart, he gets it. Like, there's no reason to believe that Stafford doesn't get it. I mean, or that he's not a smart quarterback. I mean, he's had no coaching consistency and has managed to continue playing quarterback at a pretty high level, right?
Yep.
So McVay sees LaFleur have success with Rodgers and goes, damn it, give me a frickin' quarterback that knows his ass from a hole in the ground. And Stafford more than qualifies for that. He's 33, I think, right now. I also wonder if McVay saw Brady go into Tampa Bay and have success, and looks back and thinks about Carson Palmer going to the Cardinals with Arians and having success. And it's like, when you have that much faith in your ability to coach the offense, you think it's just that one little difference, right?
Yeah, for sure. I would say where he falls short in this analogy is how little the investment was. I mean, the Palmer trade was to the Raiders, and it was for a first and a second, and it was a disaster. The signing of Palmer to the Cardinals was relatively cheap. Brady signing with the Bucks, cheap as hell.
Exactly.
That to me is the difference. But I mean, look, as I said early on, it's not McVay's problem to deal with the cap. Mm-hmm. It's not McVay's problem to deal with how do these pieces fit together in a coherent way. It's his job to coach up the players, right? And the problem, I think, is just an overall philosophy that first-round picks don't mean anything, which I do think we've gotten to a point where they're overvalued relative to history. I mean, like, think about it. Your Niners got a first-round pick for Joe Montana when Joe Montana was like 38 years old. Mm-hmm. I mean, they were not valued back in the day. I mean, the Herschel Walker trade, the Eric Dickerson trade, all that. The Vikings got a first-round pick for Brad Johnson in a trade. So, the pendulum has swung. But thinking, I mean, there's a difference between the Ravens trading a 5th-round pick for Calais Campbell and a 5th-round pick and Kenny Young for Marcus Peters, and then trading 2 1s, Jared Goff, and a 3 for Matthew Stafford.
Jared Goff's PFF passing grade 2018 was 84, 2019 72, 2020 72. Matt Stafford's has been 77, 82, and 79. So there's, it's like there's a little bit of, man, you really are hoping that this guy like jumps, into that top level. Because I was tearing out the quarterbacks, and so you've got Mahomes and Watson. I think Watson, you can either have him in like tier 2 by himself or like fringe tier 1 if you want. By the way, do you think this makes the Watson, people are saying like, oh, Watson's going to get like 8 first-round picks because of this deal. Does that?
No, and I was corrected on Twitter, I think, a little bit, which I think is smart. I do think that the Goff part of the trade is going to be considered a salary dump. So I don't think people, I said a starting quarterback, 2 1s and a 3 for Stafford. But for one, there's the discounting. I'm not discounting the ones around per year. That's ridiculous. But it's a different. It's apples and oranges, I think.
Okay, so then you have this next tier. You've got Rodgers, Brady, Josh Allen, Russell Wilson, who's in the NFC West. And then you've got another tier where you've got Dak Maybe Dak jumps into that third tier, right? It's definitely a possibility. He's definitely playing it like he was going to. And then you've got the Cousins, Tannehill, Carr, Ryan group. And then you've got the younger guys. You've got Kyler, Lamar, Baker, the even younger guys, Herbert, Burrow, Daniel Jones. Like, is Stafford's ceiling really getting into the Rodgers, Brady, Allen, Wilson tier? Because I don't think it is.
No, it's not.
So he's getting
ridiculous.
Where Stafford lands to me is in that tier with like maybe Dak, but probably Cousins, Tannehill, Carr, and Ryan. Are you really? Is that the guy you're just giving it all up for? That's the part that I think is tough for me to wrap my head around.
No, and it should be, because it doesn't make a lot of sense. You know, it shouldn't be that way.
Okay, here's a question for you. Will Matt Stafford and the Rams go to a Super Bowl?
No.
So what you're saying is Jared Goff will take the Rams to more Super Bowls.
By the way, can we
Matt
pause
Stafford.
for a second? So I know Ben Fox, the guy with I believe VEASAN now, tweeted out that like their Super Bowl odds went from 20 to 1 to 14 to 1. For one, the limits on those are pretty low.
Yep.
And two, they're not two-sided markets. So I can't just go and lay 14 to 1 that the Rams are not going to win the Super Bowl. So people have to be people have to back the fuck up on this, like on some of these reportings of like what this does to the betting market.
Yes.
I don't think it's like it has show me the odds to win the NFC West, maybe. You know, a market where I can legitimately...
You can bet the other side.
Possibly bet the other side.
Because it's of course they're going to move the odds up. One, it makes for good television. And two, people are going to go bet it. So you might as well make the odds worse.
People bet it thinking that people didn't know about it.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, it's ridiculous. So
stupid.
And it's $20 here, $100 there. There might be some big whale bettors, but they don't move the line anyway. So
And I'm willing to get old takes exposed here. I just like... they need to try and win their own division. That's going to be would be a massive hurdle.
And I again, like, we don't know. Like, so this is my thing. Would you rather you go to Bull Sim or whatever it is, if you want to buy a share in one of these two teams
on like Robinhood or something?
Well, no, there's a site called Symbol or whatever where you can buy shares in these teams, and I actually don't know the exact but you can buy, like, let's say a 3-year share on either of these two teams. San Francisco's the easy choice. Easy choice. Because here's the thing.
I was setting it up. The biggest winner in this trade were the Niners. Right? Because the Niners didn't end up having to give up anything. They didn't have to give up too much for a slight improvement, if that, at quarterback in Matt Stafford. And the Rams, a competitor, has just wasted away all of their future picks.
If you're a Niners fan right now, you have to just be holding on tight that they don't do the same thing for Kirk Cousins, and I don't think they will.
Stop!
I don't think they will.
Don't you dare!
But and that's why I was giving you shit about it yesterday.
I will not survive. If the Niners turn around and do this trade for Kirk Cousins,
what you have to hope for is that because Kirk's kind of he's kind of a prima donna. If he asks for 8 and the Niners say no, that's Steve Young's number, and he balks at it, that's what your hope has got to be. If they get that far in the process, but then it screws it over, I think that's a saving grace.
It'd be very interesting if the Niners go out and say, "Oh, you think this was a big deal?" and they find a way to get Watson. Because what's interesting is that there are reports that they're going to ask for 2 ones, they're going to ask for a couple of defensive players. Like, I love Nick Bosa. I think he's I love Nick Bosa. But you're not even blinking in giving up Nick Bosa. Whereas I'm sure the Rams were like, we can't give up Aaron Donald. Aaron Donald has literally like built our franchise up and carried it on his back.
Can you imagine if they just gave up Donald instead? I think we'd be viewing this as a far better move.
We'll give up Donald to get
Watson. So what if it
was
was Donald and Goff for Stafford? What would you have thought? And assuming the money works.
No. You barely improved it at
relative to the deal they just made.
Yeah, I don't think both of them suck in my opinion.
Yeah, but which one's better?
I don't know. That's tough, man.
You know what I'm saying? Because I don't think I think my opinion of interior defensive players has only gone up this year. But it's cleaner.
But here's the problem with that, though. You're making this trade to try and win a Super Bowl now. So you need Aaron Donald to take you from 10 wins to 11 wins, from 9 wins to 10 wins. You cannot hope that, right, the first round picks that you retain are not helping you with your current team. You know what I'm saying?
That's true.
So you're bringing in Matt Stafford, like, hey, we're going to win now. By the way, we're keeping these 2 picks that in case you suck, they'll help us win 5 years later.
I'm always giving myself outs though.
But I don't think it gives them that many more outs. I just think it lowers their ceiling for now, which is all they're playing for anyways. The ship has already sailed on when are we trying to win a Super Bowl? Right. It's right now. So I don't like that trade either. I also love Aaron Donald. So
but you know what I'm saying? Like, it's cleaner, right? Like, so somebody, our friend Tim Murray, also of VSiN, messaged me today and was asking about this proposed trade. Washington basically giving up Chase Young and a few draft picks for Deshaun Watson. And I mean, if I can sucker Houston into lowering into thinking that Chase Young is worth a 1 and a 2, I mean, to me, that's just such a edge in the NFL.
That's why the Niners and the Washington football team, they have less of a long-term connection to these star defensive players, and that will help them, I think, move that along. And Houston is going to overvalue those 2 guys.
And it's why premium positions in the draft, and this is something we've been a little wrong on in the past. Premium positions in the draft are more valuable. Like, Chase Young is never going to be worth $20 million a year. Never going to be worth $25 million. But the delta between him being picked at 2 and making what he makes, and then, Frank Clark's contract is like huge, right? Mm-hmm. And so if you can give, Nick Bosa to Houston with just 2 years left, cost control, plus and they think, oh my God, look at this guy. I'll give you a fucking Khalil Mack picks, and then you can squeeze that in as a part of the Watson deal and give up less draft capital, but just give up. I mean, it's
okay. So
especially if you're Washington, because their first round, their
can we focus on the team that matters here, which is the San Francisco 49ers? If the Niners can do that, which I think this opens up the door for one, and we want to get on the Super Bowl, but as the last point I'll make, there is a Shanahan-McVay rivalry that Shanahan right now has an opportunity, I think, to win decisively, because they can go in and bring in another quarterback that is decisively better than what the Rams have, retain draft capital, and then look at the Rams and be like, just laugh, because you've made your team better than they are right now, and will be better than they are going forward because they have more capital to spend. I just think that this would be very interesting to look at.
Did you know the Niners were a top 5 team this year in yards per play allowed?
The Niners, yeah, they were great. Weren't they 5? Robert Saleh did a great job with that defense.
But like, you guys patched together, and granted, look, you didn't win enough football games, but it had nothing to do with your defense being like banged up. Sherman was out. He's a terrific player. You guys were playing Kerry Hyder's fat ass at defensive end, and he was fine. Yeah. If you guys got Watson and never got Bosa to play another snap for your team again, I think it would be very illustrative of the value difference between defensive ends and quarterbacks, where I think people know that quarterbacks are more valuable than defensive ends. I don't think they believe it's an order of magnitude more, and it is,
which is hilarious. It'd be massively. It'd be sad for the Rams. Would be in a real tough spot. They'd be potentially the 4th best team in the division after leveraging their future, selling off their entire future to be the best they can be right now, and still being the 4th best team in their division. Anyways, we'll continue to talk about this certainly as the next couple weeks roll on, because I anticipate there'll be a lot more movement on the quarterback front. Let's talk about the Super Bowl now. We're going to do some props. Line is still 3.5 overall. Total 56.5.
It's not really,
do you feel any certain type of way about that?
So Chiefs on Pinnacle, -3, -114. Bucks +3 is +10. +103. Totals 56, some places 56.5, others. Obviously, if you like, this is just a place where you have to shop around. Don't use one book. If you like over, don't bet 56.5. If you like under, don't bet under 56. It's ridiculous, right? If you like Kansas City, lay There was a really funny discussion on Twitter. Or some of our friends, Drew and Andy, got into it, Rufus, about like, the winner of the Super Bowl is covered 88% of the time. So just either lay the three, the point spread doesn't matter. It's like, no, actually it does, because the difference between, it's like 87.5% basically, if the Chiefs win, like it's priced into the market. So this number matters here. I think, I believe it's short, but I don't know. Like, there's a ton of reasons why you could believe Tampa's the side here. Tampa has the most wins above replacement of any team in football. The problems they have from a coaching perspective are very acute. They don't have their play calling is good, not great. Mm-hmm. The defensive approach is good, not great. It's almost entirely Arians' decision making that pushes me away from them. Kansas City, from a pure power ratings perspective, is 5 points better than the Bucs, but they're without their left tackle. How much is that really worth?
I rewatched the Week 12 game today in preparation for the podcast, and I was surprised by a couple of things. First off, the Chiefs' defense did a really nice job of putting some pressure on Tom Brady, and what I came away with was that for the Bucs to score, it required Brady to be really awesome, whereas the Chiefs could pick up 7 yards literally at will with like Mahomes' eyes closed, and it looked like they didn't break a sweat the entire game. So that really worries me in thinking about this game, and like the margin for error is just so much greater for the Chiefs. It just is.
Always has been, right? All year. Yep. And that's why that's the narrative of them just fucking around all season, right? And like,
so let me ask you this. I was looking at ways to bet the Chiefs, because I think 3.5, depending on where it is. I have Tampa Bay futures. If people listen to our podcast, hopefully they do as well.
Sorry about Green Bay, by the way.
Now, the limits here might be smaller, but Mahomes MVP at -120. I have a really hard time giving Mahomes. People will take Mahomes and whatever he does, and it'll be amazing to them. You know, if the Chiefs win, them not giving Mahomes the MVP would be just mind bending to me. Yeah. So I like that in terms of potential hedge there. I also really like Brady MVP at +190.
Right, the Bucs are about +150, +160 to win. The only thing that you could see here, I mean, the last time Mike Remmer started a Super Bowl, the guy he went up against got the MVP in Von Miller. The game is, I think, a little different now.
Here's the difference, though. Tom Brady can still throw the ball 20-plus yards downfield. Peyton Manning cannot.
Well, there's also a huge bias. Last season, you could have made the case for Damian Williams to win the MVP. Mm-hmm. Like, I think, a lot of people were pissed that he didn't. A lot of people have bet in. I mean, Mahomes threw 2 interceptions. They're still the only 2 interceptions he's ever thrown in the postseason. He didn't play well for basically 3 quarters, and he still got the MVP because they came back. Yep. And the majority of his plays, I mean, he had 1 big play to Hill, 1 big play to Watkins, but the majority of the time was almost all like kind of his playmakers making plays. And so from the quarterback MVP, like, there is a smaller sliver. I think there is an edge here. Whereas if you're talking about alternative spreads to the game, so let's say you want to lay 7.5 with Chiefs +175, all of these are like, anybody who tells you that any one of these bets is better than the other is lying, because they're all priced in, and the market is sharp. The Super Bowl has more public money, but these markets are sharp. So anybody that tells you, hey, I like Chiefs -7.5 +175, is just saying, I like the Chiefs and I want more of a payout. They're not saying this bet is any better than the -3 that the market's giving you.
I think you're dead on. Okay, let's talk about some props here. Let me give you a couple first, because they're actually in line with what you just talked about. I wanted to get your take on this. Total in the game, 56.5. But I was looking at a particular book, and I noticed that the quarter totals don't quite add up, right? In fact, the quarter totals in some places can add up to as little as like 51, 52.
Right.
And I looked at both the third and the fourth quarter. Fourth quarter, 14.5 -110. Third quarter, over 10.5 +100. And thinking about the way this game goes, if you expect there to be an advantage on the defensive line for the Bucs and them to take advantage of it in the game, then it's going to happen in the first half, just like it did with the 49ers. But by the time the game wears on, as you get to the fourth quarter, Mahomes and Andy Reid are going to figure it out, and they are going to put up points.
Yeah.
Now, if the opposite is true and the Chiefs have a lead, well, then Tom Brady's going to be airing it out down the field. That's the only thing they have. They only have a vertical game. So,
and the Chiefs have, beside last week, even when they won by 2 touchdowns, they've given up plays in the fourth quarter because they don't really care about. They're clearly a team that doesn't care about the statistics they give up.
Yeah.
And they're a team that will allow things to the middle of the field that puff stats up.
So I bet both of those, and I'm curious your thoughts on them.
No, I like that. You got to be aware of the juice there as far as the numbers, but yeah, I mean that's clearly implying that's clearly implying that they see the game going a certain way. So I like it. I do like this game picking up. We saw it with the last Super Bowl. There was 20 points the first half, and then 31 in the second half.
I mean, it's implying 25 points for the second half in a game with a total of 56.
Right, exactly. Well, and especially a situation where if Tampa's ahead, I mean, the Chiefs have never not come back.
Yeah.
And the one playoff game they lost with Mahomes, they came back from 14 down at halftime. And, that game, by the way, was 14-0. Total on that game was like in the high 50s and went over. Like everybody's, you probably thought you had the lock of the century at halftime, and Mahomes and Brady.
I have not bet the side since betting AFC winner -1.5, but I bet the over almost every day.
Well, and there were
56.
and there were incongruencies in the price. Like if you looked at, there were some places I know bet Chris was 56, over was -105. And then there was, one of the sharper, Pinnacle, obviously one of the sharpest books, if not the sharpest, was, shaded to the over. So there were a number of incongruencies there. So obviously if you shopped around, you sort of got almost a no hold bet there. But here's one that I like, and I think that this plays really into where I see this game going.
Give it to me.
And I got a good number. So I got Patrick Mahomes under 330.5 passing yards at -120. I think there's a sizable edge there. Are most places, so DraftKings and FanDuel, you have at 325.5 -112. That only represents, it's at five yards more. -120 for me was 6%. -112 was 4% with 5 yards fewer. So I think Mahomes has only gone over 300 yards in a postseason game once or twice. Mm-hmm. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, his total last week was 36.5. I think everybody bet over. Fucking go 7 total yards. I think that people are thinking, okay, the Chiefs are not going to run the football in this game. I also think they've seen Mahomes get behind in the past and just dink and dunk, legitimately throw his team ahead. There's a significant fraction of this game where the Chiefs get ahead in a more balanced attack. Big plays, but also penalties. I think you're going to see some mugging of the Chiefs receivers downfield to avoid the 70-yard.
They're going to make,
and those yards don't count.
They are going to make the refs call some penalties.
Those yards don't count, and we didn't see. And in the
they're
NFC,
going to test the how much do you want Brady to win?
And in the championship round, those weren't called. I think you're going to see a little bit of a pullback, and you're going to see some big penalties called. If you get a 50-yard pass interference penalty,
it's huge.
It's huge on this prop. To me, you're kind of. If you bet Kansas City, but you're also betting this, I think it's a good companion bet in the sense of if Mahomes just stinks, you're going to win this bet. And if the Chiefs get out ahead and slow the car down a little bit, he might make you sweat it because the Chiefs are still going to throw when they're ahead. But 330.5 is an absurd prop for a passing yardage total. We haven't seen this basically all year.
It's ridiculous. It's very high. The one concern I would have is that Tampa Bay is going to sell out to stop the run. That I could just already see.
Which are you just saying you like the Chiefs -3?
I'm just telling you they're going to sell to stop the run. I have two that kind of go together here. Tom Brady over half a rushing yard +155. If you're telling me that 43-year-old Tom Brady isn't getting a sneak for a yard, you're high. And then Brady under 2.5 carries. So you could potentially hit both, but if you're going to lose the rushing yards, then under 2.5 carries is a pretty good shot. That's obviously saying kneel downs don't happen.
Yeah, kneel downs. I like the attempts one more. We bet that 2 Super Bowls ago with Brady, and we only got that because the Rams missed that like try backdoor field goal at the end with Zerline, but that was not a bad one. Okay, here's one that I like. Darrell Williams, Priest Holmes number.
Your boy.
Under 30.5 rushing yards. I would take this out to minus 125. Le'Veon Bell is going to play in this game. Some. I don't know how much. And Clyde Edwards-Helaire is 2 weeks more healthy in this game. Williams is not the guy they run. Like, Williams in a perfect world is not their running back. He's more of like what they said Fat Lenny was in Tampa prior to playoff Lenny emerging. So I like this one. There's also one on DraftKings, and I believe I said this on the PFF Daily Betting Podcast. There's one, and I think the price is still the same. Leonard Fournette minus 159 to rush for more yards than Darrell Williams.
That's pretty sweet.
Yeah, I think that Fournette. What's the opposite of thinking the world of some? I think
you think nothing of Leonard Fournette.
Yeah, but I think he'll rush for more yards than Darrell Williams in the Super Bowl.
I'm telling you right now. So this is one that, by the way, the props tool, you can go check it out. I just mentioned this as we were getting into this segment, but the props tool has a large number of the Super Bowl props up there, so you can go check them all out. And the one that I'm going against our props tool on is Leonard Fournette touchdowns. I'm betting that he scores an anytime touchdown, and I'm betting that he scores 2+ touchdowns. Why? Because of karma. Okay, that's why. Because if I bet the other side of it, you can guarantee. So I'm taking a bullet for all of you out there. Okay, and I'm betting on Leonard Fournette touchdown, 2+ touchdowns.
By the way, has there ever been a more? So his touchdown run against Green Bay,
epic,
magical. This is what I miss about COVID, right? This is what I miss during COVID.
It's still going on.
I miss, yes. While we're in COVID, this is what I miss about life.
Okay.
Let me reorient this. I miss the absolute broke-ass player on the basketball court grabbing a rebound and going coast to coast and doing like a pearl, doing like a shake, and laying the ball.
You mean this is what you missed from pre-COVID?
Yeah, pre-COVID. That's
yeah. Going to play a little pickup, and one guy sucks having one magical play.
Yeah. And Fournette just like running through the Packers defense, like using twice as much energy as anyone would have to. Like Raheem Mostert just went A to B, touchdown. Fat Lenny went from A to Z.
He went through the whole
back
alphabet.
to W to B, and then
went through the whole alphabet.
Man, and he's going to do it. If you bet under Fat Lenny touchdowns in the Super Bowl, he is going to do this.
Yeah, so I'm doing it for everyone. Okay, here are my last two that I have right now. And we're going to record again on Wednesday night, so I'll give you some more. But Travis Kelce, scoring the first touchdown is plus 600. Scoring a touchdown at any point, depending on where you look, is minus 165, minus 175. Tyreek Hill ate the Buccaneers alive in the game in Week 12. This is going to be Travis Kelce's time, okay? Devin White, not great in coverage. He's going to have to blitz. I just think that they're going to pay way more attention to those guys downfield, and Travis Kelce is going to absolutely eat. So I like both of those. And then here's the other one. Mecole Hardman under 4.5 receptions. Why? Because he's going to drop.
Is that really his number?
I think so.
Oh, my. Yeah, I mean, I see it at 2.5. Is that just our prop tool? Like,
Maybe I messed that up. So let's forget the Mecole Hardman one. You can edit that out. But I like Travis Kelce score first touchdown. And
I like the Travis Kelce bet a lot, man. I mean, here's the thing.
Actually, you know what? Screw it. I'll take Mecole Hardman under 2.5 receptions anyways.
Yeah. I mean, that was a good bet in the Super Bowl too, right? Like last year. Mm-hmm. If they give you a DeMarcus Robinson prop, under. Because last year we took Robinson under, and he like barely played in the Super Bowl. I don't think he's going to play a ton here either. I don't care what the number is, you just go. I mean, if it's a half a reception, just go under, because I don't think they're going to go with him. Here's the last one I'll take, and I've taken this basically the whole postseason. I got dinged on it against the football team, but he's been good since. I would take Mike Evans under 4.5 receptions. I would take it out to minus 145. Here's why. The Chiefs are a very good defense against wide receivers. And I think while Godwin is a terrific football player, I think the Chiefs will view him as less dangerous than Evans.
Yep.
And so it's sort of like, when you're picking up a blitz, you block in to out. That's the most dangerous. I think the Chiefs, when they go into football games, they view receivers from the most dangerous to the least dangerous, and they will let the least dangerous guy catch 8 balls. But Evans, to me, I think is the most dangerous for them, and he's a physical guy. He's not that fast, and the Chiefs corners, for all the good things they've done, and they were awesome against Buffalo, are not fast, right? They match up well with Evans. They're big physical guys. So if a receiver blows up in this game for Tampa, it's going to be Godwin, Scotty Miller, or Antonio Brown, if he's healthy. Evans is going to be the guy that's left out here. So give me under 4.5.
I love it. All right, we'll be back on Wednesday night. The Daily Betting Podcast will be out on Tuesday morning. We're going to have a kind of live show facsimile this week. We're going to record something earlier in the week, do some segments on props, other things involving the game. I can't think right now, but you get the picture. Plenty of content for you on PFF.com. Plus, Super Bowl 25, that promo code is still rocking. You get 25% off any annual subscription, Elite or Edge, or any of the college ones. Draft Guide is out. Go check it out. It's awesome. Thanks for hanging out with us. We'll see you guys later. Peace.